Hey, good afternoon, everybody. You are in the right place. This is the webinar for the launch of the GEM Women's Entrepreneurship Report. But as we usually wait a little while to gather more participants, this is just to assure you you're in the right place, you've got the right link, and we will just be with you in one moment as soon as the participants have joined. We have actually about 130 participants that have signed up for the webinar today. All of those people will not necessarily participate online. They will also look at the recording. I call it the gift that keeps on giving because, as we move through the year, we see more and more people actually accessing the recording in different ways. Okay, how are we doing? Yes, we'll just give it about 30 more seconds or so, and then we will launch into our webinar. And by the way, happy Women's Entrepreneurship Day. It's always a great day to celebrate the phenomenon of women's entrepreneurship. So 19th of November, it's a great day. Okay, we still have people joining. Joining. All right, I think I'll get going. My name is Aileen Ionescu-Summers. I am the Executive Director of Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. In a moment, I will introduce you to a few people who have very kindly agreed to participate and contribute to the webinar today. But first, I'm just going to talk very briefly about Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, because of course, not necessarily everyone. I think many of you know what that is. That's why you're there. You recognize GEM, as we call it, but others may be a little bit less familiar with GEM. For example, last night I was at the Switzerland Women's Business Network, and several women there will be attending today and who will not necessarily know GEM already. They learned about GEM last night. So let's just launch forth. Entrepreneurship, of course, we know that it fuels economic growth and it drives innovation and it creates jobs and it tackles global challenges. You'll see that play out when you listen today to the results of our research. But Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has been around for a very long time, 26 years in fact, and it has repeatedly provided very valuable insights on how best to foster entrepreneurship to propel prosperity. And goodness knows that today, with all of the challenges out there, the volatility, the relative chaos, the issues that we have around AI, the opportunities that gives, but also the challenges that brings. I think, and we all here today feel that entrepreneurship is one of the keys to tomorrow's future. GEM is a networked consortium of national country teams. It's primarily associated with top academic institutions. They carry out survey-based research on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship ecosystems around the world. We have about 380, that's right, you heard it, 380 researchers that collaborate with GEM every year through more than 60 national teams that are in the various countries that collaborate with us. You'll hear about those countries in a moment. But I think very importantly, I should emphasize that GEM is the only global research source that collects data directly from entrepreneurs. We have two sources. We have the Adult Population Survey, which is where we collect the data directly from entrepreneurs on their intentions, their perceptions, their activities, and how they move through the entrepreneurship cycle. And then we also have the National Expert Survey, which looks and provides an overview on many indicators that contribute to the success of entrepreneurship in the national context of countries. What I would like to do is to first start with two of our well, let me introduce the panel first. So we will have in a moment Amanda Elam, who is the lead author. She is a co-author of the report, but she coordinates with a number of other co-authors. And she works with Babson College as a research fellow. We have also got Massa Samsami, who's from the GEM South Africa team or has contributed to the GEM South Africa team, but she is also a report co-author. Can we go to the next slide? We have Winji Sin, who is Global Program Director of the Cartier Women's Initiative. We have Florian Taube, who is the National Team Leader for GEM Germany. And we have Shakina Williams, who is the director of the Frank and Eileen Center for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership at Babson College. Both Winji and Shakina head up organizations that, in fact, are really supporting GEM in this initiative of producing this report. So first, I would like to ask Shakina to give us a few minutes of her perspectives on women's entrepreneurship, but also the partnership that we have that you have with GEM.
Yes, thank you, Eileen. So hello, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here with you all today as we launch this year's GEM Women's Entrepreneurship Report, a cornerstone for understanding the landscape of women's entrepreneurship and how they navigate today and around the world. This report is more than just the data. It's a testament of the progress, resilience, and the potential of women entrepreneurs worldwide. As I'm looking forward to hearing my colleague, Dr. Elam, share with us all the results, I want to share a little bit about why this report is so important to us here at Babson. Through the Frank and Eileen Center for Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership, we are proud to sponsor and advance this work. As we just celebrated our 25th anniversary, the theme was "The future is in our hands." And we can say this confidently as we have many tools to support our leaders. But one of the tools that's very important to us is this report, the GEM Women's Report. The Women's Report directly informs how we design our curriculum and also programming, ensuring that our initiatives reflect the realities of women entrepreneurs that they face and provide the skills, the mentorship, and also the connections that drive success. Equally important, the report keeps our community connected to the latest global trends shaping entrepreneurship. By weaving these insights into our programs, we prepare our students to lead in an interconnected world. I want to congratulate the research team and also my colleague Amanda Elam for all the hard work and dedication to continue giving us the latest trends around women entrepreneurship around the world. We've created a resource that truly matters, and we are honored to support it and advance our tools for empowering women entrepreneurs everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shakina. And now I turn to Winji Sin of the Cartier Women's Initiative. Winji has been a staunch supporter with her organization of GEM for several years now. It is very precious support to us, but it's also a really informative partnership. And so we've had opportunities over the years to collaborate with her in different ways. But Winji not only through her organization has been supportive of the Women's Report, but also of our global report. So Winji, I would be really delighted to hear from you on some details about, your perspectives on our partnership.
Yes, thank you so much, Aileen, and thank you so much for all of the GEMS team. My name is Winji Sin, and I'm the Global Program Director of the Cartier Women Initiative. We are a international entrepreneurship program for women that is fully funded by Cartier. And since 2006, we have supported 330 entrepreneurs across 66 countries and provided more than $14 million in funding to recognize these incredible change makers. For 4 years now, we have had the honor of supporting the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor's Women's Report. And I want to take this moment to really express my gratitude towards all of the GEMS team globally for the work that they do around this work. I know they're collecting millions and millions of data points and translating them into important insights on how we, as a program provider, can leverage this incredible insights to support entrepreneurship as an engine of important economic growth. Via the supports of specifically the Women's Report, we are really hoping to bring to light women's role in leadership in this important engines of growth. And indeed, year on year, we've been leveraging the insights of these reports to affirm our actions within our program. And for this year, our key takeaway from this program, from this report, has been the importance of recognizing women as key drivers of innovation and impact. And for us, we hope to continue our awards via supporting the entrepreneurs in our program with media visibility. Several years ago already, we have launched the science and technology categories within our program, and very much so, this is also one of the key focus of recognizing women's role as drivers of innovation. We also recognize the report's highlight of unlocking capital, and for us, the awards grant that we provide to the entrepreneurs in our program and also our capital connection program is very much trying to address what Jen is telling us via this data. And last but not least, the importance of building ecosystem that really matches the woman's reality. For us, we all know that women are very much involved in a lot of care work. And for us, since 2 years ago now, we have introduced the idea of a parenthood stipend within our program. And very much so, this is to support the entrepreneurs that are participating in our program who have children less than the age of 6, so that we really recognize that the work of care is important and that they needed some support to be able to take the time out of care to participate in our program. And so we hope that these insights that Jim has helped us learn about the entrepreneurship ecosystem can really help us support better the women entrepreneurs in this ecosystem. The women in our program are turning lived challenges into very scalable solution. And the next step, it really lies within all of us. How to create an environment that can really turbocharge the women entrepreneurs to deliver on its full GDP, household, and resilient potential. Thank you, Jim, again for doing this very, very important work. And in the month of November, as in the US of the holiday of Thanksgiving, for me, I've been thinking a lot about what gratitude means. And for me, gratitude really is an affirmation of what is good. So I want to take this really big moment to really thank you for everyone who contributes to the GEM report and to bring this insights into important actions that we as program providers can make. And I hope that others, such as policymaker, educator, foundation, other corporates, will join us in supporting women impact entrepreneurs to realize their full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winji. I mean, I'm so glad that I began with both of you, Shakina and Winji, because it's kind of nice in a way to begin with what kind of impact you can have, as a research organization. Sometimes it's not always very evident to people, okay, this is the data, what can be done with the data, but you have actually managed to ground us, you, Shakina, in the educational circuit and arena, and Winji, you in the area of women impact entrepreneurs and promotion thereof. So thank you very much for that. But there are a lot of other implications and applications of GEM research as well that hopefully will come out during the discussion. So Winji, I know that you have to leave us for various reasons on your schedule. Sorry to lose you, but Shakina will be able to stay with us, and also Florian and Massa are there. And thank you so much for your contribution, Winji, today. Thank you. Okay, now now is the time to learn about some of our findings. So we're handing over to Amanda Elam, who, as I said, is our main author on the report.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aileen.
Yes.
I'm going to actually second Aileen's comment. A little applause for our report sponsors and the words that they had to share with us today, because I think for researchers, there's hardly anything more exciting than to see our data have impact. Just really, really exciting. And this is a big passion project for everybody on this call, for all of the contributors who are not on the call. I think we're all really understand the value of the data. So for the 2024 data, this data comes from the GEM Adult Population Survey. Some years we also include analysis of the National Expert Survey, not this year. We focused on responses from over 160,000 working age adults. So those are adults aged 18 to 64 in 51 countries in 2024 across 5 regions and 3 national income levels. We were excited that we had a couple of new measures this year. So we had one measure that looked at the importance of AI tools for businesses, and we had another one asking adults who had invested in a business in the last 12 months what the gender of the business founder was. So that provides some interesting insights this year. All right, so you know, the countries that participate in the survey change every year, so we're cautious when we talk about our global rates. It's hard to compare year to year if the sample changes, but women continue to represent 1 out of 10, well, 1 out of 10 women every year start a business compared to 1 out of 8 men. That said, women's startup rates were up in 19 of the 47 countries that have participated in 2023 and 2024. So we are seeing some movement. As reported in last year's report, a lot of the countries driving the increase in participation, women's participation in startups are in the Middle East. And in 2024, 2 standout countries where Jordan and Morocco saw, you know, big increases in their startup rates for women. And this is important because the rates of entrepreneurial intentions, those who want to start a business, are quite high in the Middle East and North Africa region. But we've known for a while that they've had some challenges converting those intentions into actual startup rates, particularly for women. So we're very encouraged to see some jumps in startup activity among women in these in this region. So in most countries, you know, men are starting businesses at higher rates, but you'll notice that orange line on top are the men's rates of startup. But you'll notice that even in a few countries, women are starting businesses at faster rates than men. So it really speaks to the heterogeneity of the data. All right, so when we look at why people start businesses, I'm highlighting 2 particular findings here. The top 2 reasons for both men and women are job scarcity and wealth creation. For women, about 70% of those who started a business said they were doing it because they couldn't find another job. And so we often refer this to necessity entrepreneurship. Again, for men, that compares to 2/3 of men as well, right? So in many parts of the world, starting a business is the only way you can generate income for your family. Building wealth, though, is another important motivation for men and women. And you'll notice that for women, job scarcity is a little bit more important than for men. That gap's a little bit on the upside, whereas for building wealth, men tend to be more likely to say that that was their primary motivation for starting. But also making a difference in the world. About half of both men and women around the world say that that's an important motivation for starting a business, and then about 1/3 also speak to family tradition. Women were about 50% more likely than men to report a business exit due to family and personal reasons. So we also asked these entrepreneurs, did you close a business in the last 12 months? The number one reason that people close a business around the world is because of lack of profit, right? That could be product market fit. It could be the market just isn't big enough. It could be that the business model just didn't kind of work out. But fast following on that are you know, pursuing other opportunities. That's the purple up there. And you'll note that in most countries, men are more likely to say that that they close their business to pursue another opportunity. And then on the flip side is when closing for personal reasons, family reasons, women were much more likely across all levels of national income to say that they had to close the business for family or personal reasons. And we think that that is an area where policymakers can and program leaders can address directly, much like what Winji referenced with the childcare stipend. We also, of course, are very interested in the role that women play in high potential entrepreneurship. So high potential entrepreneurship, these are the kinds of businesses that are seeking the impact that really matters for policymakers, right? So these are the businesses that are introducing new innovations into their markets, whether they're local, national, international. These are the businesses that are creating jobs. These are the businesses that are expanding the tax base. These are the businesses that are engaging in export. So export activity, so exporting products to other countries. And so when we look at some of these measures, I think it's notable, that women in high income countries are really driving the participation of women in high potential startup activity. And I think that that's it's important to emphasize, but also to note that women are also very active in middle income and low income countries. And maybe that's an area where these countries could actually find better ways to support entrepreneurs who are seeking to build businesses that have a big impact on social progress and economic growth in these countries. Women were, digitalization. We've been really interested in digital measures, but I think it's really fundamental to understand the relationship between industry segregation. We know that industry is one of the most important explanations for gender differences in business performance. I think that that's something that's really important for our interpretation of a lot of different indicators. Women are about half as likely as men to be active in the internet communications technology sector. And I think that's a really important area, especially in middle and lower income countries where policymakers can advance programming and policy different initiatives to get women a little bit more involved in digitally driven businesses. And that will address the whole digital divide in an important way. Women, so again, with digitalization, really important measure. We had our new measure on AI this year. We know that there's a gender digital divide globally. It can vary a lot across country, but overall, in our 51 country sample this year, women were about 11% less likely to view artificial intelligence as important for business. Again, this is an area where with policy and programming, we can maybe address that directly. To what extent that has to do with the sector that these women are operating businesses is a question that could be answered. But we also understand that these AI tools have broad applications and very fundamentally, for example, are having a big impact in functions like marketing and communications right now. So the question there is, how could these tools really amplify the work of women in these across all industries? This is our new investor question. So we asked 3 questions here. So we were looking at what the gender was of the person that the respondent said they had most recently made a business investment in. And so with this data, we understand that women were about 2.5 times more likely to invest in other women than men investors were. So women receive about 1/3 of the investment capital, and women investors were much more likely to invest in women. And as you can see, men investors, about 3/4 were invested in other men. And before anyone jumps to conclusions here, I think the key message and takeaway from this slide is really that women are not only underrepresented among individuals starting a business, they're also underrepresented among individuals investing in businesses. And so this is where from a policy perspective, and program perspective, we can advance women's activity in informal business investment and in more formal investing sectors, right? So we'd love to see more women investing in venture capital. We'd love to see more women angels investing in businesses as well. So this has been a measure, our entrepreneurial perceptions are a measure that policymakers, program leaders are very interested in. And I thought this slide was really informative to the extent that it shows you how much the gender gap in entrepreneurial perceptions is really a first world problem, right? These gaps are much higher in high income countries. And this probably has a lot to do with the types of businesses that individuals are starting in these countries. But it also has to do with this relationship between affluence and, and occupational choices, right? What do people choose to do? And how gender plays out in this context of the opposite of resource scarcity, right? When resources are plentiful, you have lots of choices. Is the threat, for example, of women in male-dominated sectors higher for individuals in high-income countries? All of these are questions where research could address and bring more answers. And finally, that leaves us with our policy recommendations. Every year it's a challenge to come up with policy recommendations because we want to tie it very specifically to our data. And our data keeps telling us the same story over and over again every year. This is something that Aileen and I spoke about recently. And so we're really trying to communicate a balanced story here, right? So on the one hand, what are the barriers that women face? What can policymakers do to overcome some of those barriers? And then on the other hand, it's, what contributions are women already making to innovation, to job creation, that economic and social progress that countries like to see. So, and I'll just kind of qualify all that in the context of different patterns play out in different regional and national contexts. So whatever programs are being developed, whatever policy that is being advanced, it's really important to tailor it for diverse entrepreneurial context, to understand specifically what's happening in your context, and then understand the varieties of different ways different communities, entrepreneurs are trying to start and grow businesses. Of course, we've been focusing for a long time on business startup, but we're definitely, in the GEM data, we do see that there is a need for programming that supports business continuity and scaling, supporting women in high potential sectors where they tend to trigger these stereotype threats, and it can be hard going for women seeking legitimacy and resources in these sectors. I think broadening our informal and formal investment networks, including more women, like there should always be a woman at the table, or should be a priority in every country. Promoting digital and AI adoption. We really need to find ways to address this gender digital gap. And help business owners, even if they have very small businesses, understand what types of tools can help them increase their productivity or efficiencies. And then finally, we come down to our psychological well-being and resilience support. I think for a long time, we've really been focused on how do we help women feel more confident. I would say that, feeling less confident in a context where it's harder for you to establish legitimacy or access the resources needed to succeed is a very rational response to your circumstances. So this is just a call for policymakers, program leaders, researchers to think about it, right? When people aren't feeling confident in their startup skills, or when they're not seeing opportunities, right? How much does that have to do with the context in which they're operating? And I will close there. Thank you, everyone. I'm excited about the launch of the report, and, just really hope that it's useful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amanda. As you were saying, well, I think this is the 13th edition of our Women's Entrepreneurship Report. And we have, in the last few years, I think for the last 5 or so years, decided to issue a Women's Entrepreneurship Report every year. And of course, you could say, well, will the results differ year on year enough to warrant producing a women's entrepreneurship each year? But actually, I think that there is what you might call, I said it to Amanda yesterday, um, the woodpecker approach, which means that you always keep knocking on the same points again and again and again. And hopefully, if you take different ways of getting around that same point, which we try to do at GEM, to convey the importance of acting on these issues to policymakers in particular, well, then action will be taken. But not only do we take this woodpecker approach, as I call it, but as you will have heard from what Amanda has said, there are always new questions in the questionnaire that give new insights. And so that's really interesting, especially to hear about the AI differences between women and men, for example, and then other issues. But I'm going to turn now to our panelists. Perhaps I could start with you, Shakina, that you might be able to give me your reaction to what you've been hearing. What was going through your mind?
Yes, Amanda, thank you so much. Every year, I'm just so impressed with the data and also how we continue to expand and get more participants to fill out surveys. And one of the things, I'm digressing a little bit, but one of the things I really stress to our participants that go through our program and when I speak to people is like the importance of completing surveys because we get the data and we get the very diverse perspectives all over the world. So one of the things that kind of really stood out to me, Amanda, when you were going over the highlights is confidence versus startup skills. We do this very well in our program. We talk about boosting their confidence, making sure they leave empowered. But one of the things that I saw the big potential gap between women and men is the startup skills. And I know you mentioned AI, but one of the things that those that design programs, that's something that we really need to hear very loud about the additional skills that women entrepreneurs need. And then also, I guess it's a question back to you, Amanda. Did you see anything else really describing what these skills should be for the future entrepreneurs?
Okay, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, Amanda. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I would say that a lot of what we're interested in on the research side is not just the gaps in skills for women or entrepreneurs generally, but where entrepreneurs are really advancing in areas where researchers might not be aware that they're developing skills, right? So I think about sustainability, for example, right? Researchers aren't driving that. We're really mostly mapping it and trying to understand it and codify it in a way where other people who want to launch, grow sustainability focused entrepreneurship initiatives can understand, what's driving it. On the other side of that, I think that really understanding the digitalization, the AI, we know from COVID. Shaki and I know we've talked about this before, but when during the pandemic, there was all the businesses were in survival. The market disruptions were, extensive, pervasive, felt very, unending there for a long time for business owners. And the businesses that had an edge were the ones that went digital. And that's where researchers, I think, are actually driving this message to say, look at this, like when forced to do it, the businesses that took on these digital tools, were able to mitigate their losses or drive revenue during a period where everybody was suffering from losses. And the impacts were particularly pronounced for women. And that's, we think, largely because of the women tend to grow some of the smallest, most vulnerable businesses in terms of external threats, but also because of this gender digital divide. And so I think that's something that maybe addresses your question. We're learning from the entrepreneurs, but we're also identifying trends that can help you power those entrepreneurial efforts as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Florian, can I turn to you? What was going through your mind, and what are your comments on the results this year?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I think I'm the token male panelist today.
Well, we have to have the one representative male, right?
No, I appreciate that. So thank you very much. Because
Although we do have one male in the background, Kevin Anselmo, who is our communications consultant and who has contributed to organizing this seminar. So thanks, Kevin. Go ahead, Florian. Yeah.
yeah, some interesting findings, and I would like to share some views from our German perspective. And when I say our, there's also lead author of a German Women Entrepreneurship Report in the list of participants, Natalia Gorynia-Pfeffer. She and the rest of the team produced a report that also addresses the heterogeneity of the global database that we have. But we didn't look at the regions. We made some comparisons with a few select high-income countries for German policymakers to have better reference points to see where does Germany stand compared to other European countries, compared to a few non-European high-income countries. And a lot of things that Amanda said are just the same. I mean, the change or the lack thereof is really not only over time, but also across countries. And in many of the dimensions that we have in the GEM database, women perform less well than men. But we have some exceptions, and I'd like to share a few, give you a sneak preview of some of the positive outliers from the German report.
Okay.
It'll be officially launched on the 9th of December, so it's not published yet. So just give you a few, without revealing too much detail, maybe. So there are two positive.
Can I just intervene just to say that anyone who wishes to ask a question, please pop it in the Q&A while anybody else is speaking. No problem. We will see that question and try and table it. Thank you. Sorry, Florian, to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what we did is we of course looked at lots of the questions that we have in our regular database, because there's much more than we can put in a regular annual report. There are always indicators that don't find their way in. So we said, okay, let's do some additional analysis. But we also added some questions that we only have for Germany and maybe a few other select countries by working with other organizations that do similar reports, like a green startup monitor, which we have here in Germany. And we thought, hey, there are some interesting questions that go beyond what we have on SDGs. And that's on the economic effects of taking into account social or ecological aspects into past or future decisions. And here's one of the first positive results that people talk a lot about women being more responsible in their business decisions, being more social, more ecological. And what we found here is that compared to men, women have stronger effects on turnover, profits, and number of employees compared to men.
Oh, interesting. Yes, go ahead.
So it really pays off. So we might look at AI, but maybe there's more potential in green and sustainable and social businesses where women are actually, or seem to be leading, at least in Germany. So this is something what we found really interesting. And there's also some socio-demographics. Female entrepreneurs are 3 years older on average, but they're much better educated. 50% have university education compared to 40% of men. But it's the average. We also looked at, because we have a new partner in Germany that specializing in geographical effects, and rural-urban divide tells us that this doesn't hold for rural areas. So this means that in cities, women must have even more university degrees compared to men, because they have fewer in the rural areas. You mentioned exports. in Germany, female entrepreneurs actually have a higher export intensity. It's not the big margin, but a little bit. So probably not deviating too much from the means that we have. But where we have really an interesting point, and that's something that's in the public discussion quite a lot in Germany. That's investments in female-led or mixed startups mainly, and also the rate of or the share of female investors, and both seem to be lagging really by a large margin. I think of the venture capital, about 2% or a low single-digit number goes to female-led startups. We can't really differentiate between startups and other new businesses, but what we see is that the rate of women in the population that make informal investments is growing, the absolute numbers. So they participate more as informal investors, which is really a positive sign. And what is even more positive, of course, is only for this 1 year. So that's the typical issue that we have with if we try to interpret just one data point, that women are more open with regard to the informal investments they make. We know that in most countries, men invest more in men, women invest more in women, but the degree is also interesting. And women invest more in women also in Germany, but less so than men do in men. So they are more open for the other sex. Plus, we know about family, friends, and fools as the first investors in your businesses. I think there's a lot in the research literature also. Women are also more open, or seem to be more open, in investing in strangers, not family, not friend-run businesses. So there's some very positive bits in our data that I think we can also use to tell stories that might be useful as role models for other countries and other settings maybe. Well, it could go on. Of course, we also used the NES this year, actually. So there's also a little bit on that. And we added
the
some
NES
questions.
being our National
yes.
Expert Survey, which is the kind of the survey that I mentioned it looks at national context indicators.
Yes, thank you. Because Amanda said she didn't, you didn't use it this year in the Global Women Report. And we had some national questions on how to address women, deducted from a focus group, qualitative studies. We would try to deduce a couple of questions and what content and what channels women are mostly interested in, how they get their information, and what kind of information they are interested in the most. And a lot of that has to do with legal and accounting information. So I would stop here because I don't want to go on for too much longer.
I mean, what we got there is much more than just a peek at your results, and actually very, very interesting. Amanda, I would really love you to respond to it, but what I'm going to do first is gather from Massa her reaction. Well, she was a co-author after all, so nothing came as a surprise, or did it, to Massa? But maybe Massa, you might talk about the process of writing, what intrigued you, what surprised you, anything that you think might contribute some insights here. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Olin. Hello, everyone around the globe. Actually, thank you for being here. I'm thinking that's an absolute honor for me to be here and talk about the women entrepreneurs, not because I'm a woman and also co-author the Women Entrepreneurship Report, but I am thinking it's very interesting to track entrepreneurial endeavors among the women. Let's exactly articulate what we're exactly learning from the report. We reported that gender differences in the reason for business exit, that exactly Amanda pointed out. And then definitely it varies significantly around the world. And one of the most significant and highlighted reason, as my co-author Amanda pointed out, is based on the family and the personal reasons, particularly in the global south, that we can see that compared to the global north. That is a non-financial pressures that we can see in the South Africa, Latin American as well, related to, for example, caregiving, caretakers, family responsibilities, and the commitment. We would like to highlight that if a few women survive, that doesn't mean the women are less fit. So we have to think about that. It means the system is less fair. Survival, it's not always a good measurement for actually demonstrate the women entrepreneurs' ability and the capability. It might demonstrate something else. As an example, we can think about the barriers that the women entrepreneurs face, particularly in the global south, such as the South Africa or the Latin American and some part of the Middle East, that we can say that. So we can say that from those few women who survive in the entrepreneurial careers or activities, exceptionally a survival of the fitness is highlighted, we can say that. Let's take an example to illustrate more. As exactly Amanda pointed out, highlighted desire and the motive among the women, we can see that also in the global thought, is make a difference around the world to run a business, to become entrepreneurs. Because women entrepreneurs are more prioritizing the social and environmental sustainability compared to the men, rather than the global, the economic goals in the global south. And in one of our latest study with the national team, it's also included the Florian from the GEM, Germany in GEM, involving the GEM. We found that, yes, women entrepreneurs are less utilizing, I can say, that the artificial intelligence, artificial assessment, and the forecasting of the artificial intelligence. But we have to think about that. Women entrepreneurs are engaged, they are embedded in the ecosystem and institution. We can see that, for instance, in Germany, that women entrepreneurs are more legitimized compared to the global south. Those society will lead the women entrepreneurs to enhance their assessment for artificial intelligence, for digitalization, and also for forecasting of the artificial intelligence. So let's again repeat, as you said, that the women entrepreneurs need a support in integrating artificial intelligence, digitalization, not because to also just improve or enhance that their competitiveness in the market, but let's to think about that they have a second hand to utilize the artificial intelligence to react to the market faster, to have a more capability and ability to react to the market, regardless of that family reasons or the family personal reasons that they are actually struggling. So let's again repeat, as we said that every year, that the system need to build a strong foundation through access, financial access, or infrastructure, integrating artificial intelligence and digitalization for women entrepreneurs, because women need a support for visibility, confidence, inclusion, and the reducing a stereotype, because then policymakers can demonstrate stakeholders that the women entrepreneurs can be positioned not only to survive, but also perform better, to be more innovativeness, to move their market scope at the local environment, expand their scope and market scope in the international environment, to better, such as something that we are learning from the Germany, to have a better expectation for the actually growth and have a more job creation in the future for more employees. Thank you, Ali.
Okay, very interesting. Amanda, would you be able to, just before you do so, react to both Florian and Masa, I would just, I wonder whether I could ask our participants to think of one or two key questions. If you've got a burning question out there, please don't hesitate to put it in the Q&A. Over to you, Amanda.
So, well, thank you both for your good thoughts. Florian, I'm super excited to see the report when it gets launched in December on women's entrepreneurship in Germany and some of the other European countries I know you've touched on in your analysis. I think that it's a great example of, again, that idea of the diversity or heterogeneity we see across countries, right? So globally, women who have, made an informal investment in a business over the last 12 months typically are less likely to invest in strangers than men. But here in Germany, we have an exception to that. And that's intriguing. And so, again, that's part of the caution we offer when we're saying, here's what the global pattern looks like, because that pattern could be completely the opposite in a given country.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why every year with the Women's Report, we provide indicator tables. So, and that's so that policymakers or program leaders, wherever they are, can actually look up and see what the numbers are for their particular country. I think that's just a really useful tool for, for supporting those individuals out there who really trying to make a major difference in the lives of women entrepreneurs every day. So thank you for that. I cannot wait to see. I'm so tickled about the green economy sort of deep dive that you all did, because I think that's something that we need to do more in terms of segmentation analysis, is really understand, are the gender patterns the same in every industry sector? And so, again, we provide these top line data for hopefully to inspire researchers and policymakers to think about what is actually happening in front of them every day, and how to better understand what their focal population is dealing with. So super excited there. And then Masa, absolutely.
Just
I
a
think,
second, Amanda, before
yep.
you go on to Massa,
Mhm.
I might just point out, just to finish things off nicely, tie
Yeah.
things up with Florian, because there's a link on the Q&A where you can register to the launch of the report to which Florian was referring. By the way, you can also download the report, the Global Women's Entrepreneurship Report, on our website, gemconsortium.org. That's gemconsortium.org. I just had a few queries there about where the report was, and it's definitely on our website today. So thank you. Over to you, Amanda. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I would say encourage people to put any questions you have in the Q&A, but also if you have suggestions in terms of, topics you'd like to see covered in more detail for next year's Women's Report, please feel free to suggest. It's certainly a conversation that we have among our contributors every year. It's big, rich data. And to give you an idea of what Masa and I go through every year is we're analyzing, effectively over 260 variables. And that's kind of where we start. And every year with our outline, we're trying to cast it in a way that, will resonate with what the conversations are out there. It's certainly in the research community, but also in policy and more broadly, public discourse around women's entrepreneurship. So we're always looking for good ideas as we're developing it. And this is part of what Aileen talked about with the woodpecker. If we're looking at the same indicators every day, there are so many different ways that we can approach an analysis, that we can think about interpretation. So suggestions are invited. Okay, so Masa, I think that your comments on the Global South are incredibly important. And I think that hopefully that was one of the takeaways from the overview of our new report today, is that the patterns, depending on the context, right, in terms of national income, I think are quite different. And so gender patterns can be different. Also, you'll see that men and women their rates actually tend to correspond very strongly with whether they're low income, whether they're middle income, whether they're high income. And that speaks to the resource environment. So job scarcity, we know, is a much bigger issue in the Global South than it is in highly developed countries. On the flip side, we know that those entrepreneurial perceptions are a much bigger deal in high income countries than they are in these developing context. And that comes back to the kind of businesses that really predominate in these different settings. So talking about high income is where we really dig into digitalization and AI and understanding how these tools can confer a competitive advantage in whatever marketplace these entrepreneurs are chasing. And then what I really appreciated about your comments too was just, we do have a tendency to focus on, we have our blinders on. We tend to focus on, well, how many people are starting businesses without paying attention to how many people are starting sustainable businesses, how many of those businesses are actually growing and succeeding, and the factors that might be important for someone in the business startup process may be quite different from the factors that matter when it comes to growing that business, especially by industry sector. The final comment I'll make after listening to Florian and Masso is really this idea of sustainability and and desires to make the world a better place. I think that women are much more likely to start businesses in industry sectors that are directly addressing social challenges, right? So think social services, think health, think education. And I would say even within the retail services, women tend to focus on businesses that address some really basic needs as, food services, housing, personal care types of businesses. And I think that's where women are also expressing a lot of this ethics. So when we're looking at sustainability, when we're looking at, entrepreneurs and we're asking, are you prioritizing economic goals over social goals? The margins are actually, reasonably small, pretty typical for a lot of gender gaps. Usually fall 5 to 10 points. Usually it's when we're seeing gaps much larger than that it attracts our attention. I think the invisible expression of those cultural logics, though, are what we see when it comes down to sectoral choice, like which sector are you starting a business in, or and then maybe it's not a choice. Maybe women are being pushed into the lower margin sectors or kept out of the high profit sectors. So we have lots of questions around how these patterns actually play out, and more specifically, how those patterns can look quite different depending on the context that we are observing them in.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a very comprehensive response, Amanda. Thank you so much. I think some very interesting points came out there. We do have one question which I'd like to just quickly cover. Is there any data available about women entrepreneurs worldwide participating in formal female networks, i.e. business networks, maybe the reasons on why they participate in these formal networks and why do they exit? And that was the question. We are not really collecting information on that, but I had a very interesting discussion last night at the Swiss Business and Professional Women's Association. And it's not specifically an organization that is for entrepreneurs, but for all business people who are women. And they actually said that they were heavily, heavily impacted by the COVID period, where membership dropped off and hasn't really recovered yet. That was quite interesting from the point of view of that particular question. Any other comment on that, Amanda?
I would actually highlight that Shakina here is running one of those big networks for women entrepreneurs, and Winji, who had to leave early for another meeting, the Cartier Women's Initiative similarly is running a huge global network for women entrepreneurs, and both CWEL and CWI collect their own internal data. Now, the extent to which this data is shared externally or published, I think it's a really good question, but maybe go to Shakina and say, Shakina, do you have any comments on the female network question?
Yeah, so a great question. Yes, Amanda, we collect data for all of our programs, and we also have an impact report. And I think if you really comb the landscape of women accelerators and also programs. Majority of those organizations do have impact reports and also are open to share their data for research.
Yep. And then Masa might have some input here too from a Global South perspective. What I'll say about my work in the Global South is we know that, you know, village level savings groups, women's unions are incredibly important networks that support women entrepreneurs, and there is published data on that. Masa, do you have anything to add on that?
Actually, just I can say that in the Global South, if we are digging into the detail of the environment, for instance, even in the Global South, we can see that this comparison study based on the network analyzing that we can see that in the rural area compared to the urban area, because then they have some kind of the consequences even for their performance related to outcomes, such as the sustainability, even for their communication, or even the, I mean that their networks in their rural area, they perform better to be more sustainable, even to have a more prioritizing. In the GEM data also, we can have some more information. I can say that based on the knowing more entrepreneurs to get a more high level of the entrepreneurial orientation, that will have several consequences for the performance among the women entrepreneurs as well. We can actually can learn more about the women entrepreneurs with those information and observation as well.
Lorian, how about you?
Yeah,
I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up very quickly.
Okay.
We're
I
at
like the
time.
Global South perspective, because microfinance emerged from countries like Bangladesh based on the trust of informal networks between women and the higher propensity to repay their loans. These were all micro businesses that they started to nurture sustain their families. But this is also, I think, the economies per se were very informal at that point and still are. So, but these were basically business networks.
Yes.
Excellent. Yep.
Okay, well, I think we're going to, as I said, to wrap up. You can visit www.gemconsortium.org, as I said, to download a copy of our report, but also to get any information that you may require from a national or international perspective on our data. The other thing that I would say is that if anyone is out there in a region where we do not have a national team, and you can quickly find that out also on our gemconsortium.org website, please think of whether you know of someone, or whether you are yourself someone who might be able to assemble a team in a country where we do not as yet have a team, or maybe we had a team in the past, but right now we don't, because teams come in and out of GEM depending on economic circumstances and depending on strategies of research institutes and universities, etc. But we can do with as many teams as possible. I just leave it to say that I'm actually looking forward to next year's report already, because I feel, you know, in GEM, we collect our data starting, you know, in the late spring and going through the early summer. And basically, a lot has happened the world economy since then. And I think things will play out in terms of women's entrepreneurship and the impact on women's entrepreneurship, in fact, on entrepreneurship in general, in a big way when we look at next year's results. That's a whole nother conversation that unfortunately we can't go into right now, but let's look forward to next year. And I'd like to thank you very much, Shakina, Masa, Florian, and especially Amanda, for everything you have contributed today and to the report in general. Thank you so much. And goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.